we're not just creating content for humans, we're now having to create content for robots. When we create our content, you really have like two audiences. You need to make sure that your hooks are good and that you're keeping people's attention, but AI could care less about their AI doesn't have an attention span. So now it's looking at your AI visibility of, do you have a core entity statement?
Katie Shive, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Long time coming for this. I was thinking about you and I and our kind of history, and I'm so appreciative and grateful for you and the edification you've provided for me over the years and the connection to people. And that's why I'm glad to bring you to the main stage, if you will. To more people need to know about Katie Shive and what she does. I'm going to give you the AI version. Nope, my turn still. I'm going to give you the AI version, seeing as we're going to talk about AI in a minute. Who is Katie Shive? She's a brand
Okay.
strategist, marketing expert who helps mortgage professionals and other business owners build strong personal brands and use AI to create content that sounds like them. Agree?
100% yes on that part. Yep.
Would you like to
It's
add
always a
anything?
little nerve-wracking when you are, when you talk a lot about AI and then it's like you're put in the hot seat. You're like, I hope
I
I
know.
trained it well. Let's see
Well,
what
and
it says.
it's a great opener because we're going to talk about training AI. And I asked the question, right? Who's Katie? And then it went on to say, you teach them how to use AI tools without sounding robotic, how to build their voice and visibility. You're a branding coach, AI marketing guide, and your goal is to help people sound like themselves and attract clients online.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
good job. Yes,
Good
I have
job, AI.
arrived. I have all my late night hours of obsessively figuring this out. Glad to know it's working.
That's fantastic. Okay, so is there anything you would want to fine tune on that? Do you think it's good to go out of the box?
I would say it's good to go out of the box. I mean, that's
Okay.
really what I have been working on refining that messaging. And that's, yeah, I love anything that's related to personal branding and AI. I love the mortgage space. I do a lot of coaching, all of those
Yeah.
things. So it says it more eloquently than I just word jumble. I don't have it all memorized and perfectly polished, which is goes back to the
Sure.
authentic part of it. But yeah, I would say it very accurately
Okay.
describes what I do.
Well, seeing as we entered there with my use case, which is I use ChatGPT to search and Gemini, and I just put in one question: Who is Katie Shive? I didn't give it any other context besides that. So let's briefly then tease out this idea of why did ChatGPT know who you were and what you were all about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk about AI visibility, right? I mean, we could get real nerdy really fast on SEO and GEO and AEO and it's the alphabet soup. EIEIO. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, so we are singing those songs. But um, when we talk about, people just say, "Oh, I got to create content." Go. The more content you create, the more findable you'll be.
Mhm.
There is probably truth to some of that, yes, but then you want to also optimize your content. It's just like, when people spend thousands of dollars and hire agencies to optimize their SEO and keywords and things like that. Now I say this in trueness is we're not just creating content for humans, we're now having to create content for robots. So
Mm.
when we create our content, you really have like two audiences. So you need to make sure that your hooks are good and that you're keeping people's attention,
Mhm.
right? But AI could care less about their AI doesn't have an attention span. So now it's looking at your AI visibility of, do you have a core entity statement? So what you read is my describer of who I am. I've worked on the back end to develop my core entity statement, which if you don't know what that is, do you know what a core entity statement is?
No, I wanted you to expand on that and then tell us, does that live somewhere?
Yeah. So core identity statement it's really like that. It's just another word. It's like your one sentence bio, right? So
Mhm.
it's like Katie Shive is a Montana based, brand and AI visibility coach that helps loan officers, blah, 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 blah. Right. So you think about it, it's like, what's your name? What's your location? What's your experience? Who's your audience? Right. So there's a couple components that make up to that. Now you can get really creative because you don't have to say it in the exact same formation across all of your different bios. But if you're Jeff Zimfer on one, and then maybe you're like Jeffrey Zimfer on another, and you're a mortgage advisor here, and you're a lender here, and you're a certified, mortgage planner here. So as much as you can, you want to have a core statement so that AI, the LLMs, when they're crawling, they can easily recognize and build that out to your entity cluster, which makes up all things you.
So, how do we build that online? Where does that live in our social profiles or where?
Yeah, so anywhere that you have control over your bios. So, I mean, the easy high hits are your LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, if you're on TikTok, your company website, if you have your own, personal website, things like your Zillow profile or your experience.com profile, your Google business profile. So any online profile that could be findable, is, that you have a login and you have the ability to control, you want to update that.
Hmm.
So that's one piece. And then there's other mechanics like, as you're writing content. So a really great way to start training LLMs is to be having long form content. I love that long form content is coming back, because it's not just that people are suddenly wanting to read long form content, but it's a way to provide, information to LLMs to know who you are, and you're training them essentially. So if you have a LinkedIn newsletter, or you're writing LinkedIn posts, or maybe that's Quora or Substack, there's a couple of mediums you could use. Um, but at the end of that, like, your profiles are obviously going to be optimized. But then
Hmm.
another thing that you can do is at the bottom of each article, you could have, I believe in PR, they call this a boilerplate. It's basically like that little bio paragraph at the bottom of your article that's, Jeff Simfer is blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of your
Hmm.
three
Yeah.
sentence boilerplate.
Your little bio section there. Okay. So the
Yeah.
first place we need to train the AI to
Mhm.
call the what did you
Your
call it
core
again?
core entity statement. So, I mean, that's kind of a technical term, or at least how I've been learning it. But think about it, it's your one liner. It's the who are you, what do you do, who do you serve, where do you
Right.
live. We are Most everybody that's listening to this already has that in some capacity. If you look at
Right.
your company website or whatever. Now, there's obviously ways that you can enhance that, and probably make it really succinct and very clear. But yeah, so you want to have your bio. There's consistency and cohesion in your bio across
S-
all of your different platforms.
So it should say essentially the same thing across whatever profiles you have online.
Yeah, I mean, so here's an example. Like when I go into LinkedIn, for example, that exact sentence isn't in my about me in my bio. How I get around that is like, well, my name is in my bio. It's very
Hmm.
clear at the top of my header, Katie Shive. It's not Caitlin, it's not Kate, it's Katie Shive. Everywhere is consistent is my name. Everywhere consistent is my headshot. But then in the longer form, I make sure to include I'm in Kalispell, Montana, and I help, loan officers and mortgage professionals. So it's like bringing in some keywords as well. So I want to clarify, SEO is not dead, but it's kind
Right.
of pairing the two.
Hmm. Well, I speaking of SEO, I know you know Neil Patel, right?
Yes,
So I saw Neil Patel's video the other day. You may have seen him use this phrase SEO, which is search everywhere optimization.
yes. It's like that is really a brilliant descriptor, because I think
Leave
sometimes
it to Neil.
we leave it to Neil, right? And sometimes you're like, man, the most simplest statement, why does it feel like the most brilliant?
Hmm.
Because we can over jargon. We have so much jargon in our own industry too. I think sometimes it's like you can't keep up with acronyms and terms, but yeah, it's search everywhere and GEO. I don't have a good G use for that, but
Right.
yeah, it's
Well,
basically LLMs, large language models, are crawling the internet, and everywhere that they can pull it,
right.
you want it optimized.
And it also goes to the point of that term of search everywhere optimization, that's what consumers are doing today. Case in point, they're searching AI like we opened up with, but they're also searching, the social platforms as well: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
Yeah,
Everything's becoming kind of search driven at various levels.
yeah. Maybe
Um,
we're gonna call it go everywhere optimization
all
for
right.
GEO.
Trademark that thing. Well, so it
Trademark,
reminds
it's go
me,
everywhere.
this whole thing of like a positioning statement, a core entity statement, it
Mhm,
gets back to like, optimizing. You mentioned LinkedIn. I'm looking at you on LinkedIn. So for those who are aware with this, is like, one of the kind of the best practices is it's like, who you kind of said this. Who are you? What do you do? What problem do you solve? Something to that
mhm,
effect. So your LinkedIn says brand and AI strategist helping mortgage pros talk like real humans, not templates. Well, that's very clear on who you are, what you do, who you help, and the problem that you
mhm.
solve.
Yep,
So if anything, if you're listening to this and thinking about how do you optimize your profile, your bio, first of all, use AI to help you.
100%.
What would you
Well, and that's
coach
the
them on
thing.
that alone?
Yeah, I literally had a loan officer reach out to me this morning in exactly this conversation. So now I'm excited because I'm going to just send him the link to this podcast when it's done and be like, here's the whole thing. Um, but his question literally was, I just put my name in. Who is so and so, and what does he do? And he goes, I was really shocked by the results, or in his case, the lack thereof,
Ah,
despite
yes.
how many reviews he has. And so he said, do you have any recommendations for that? And that's literally what this conversation is about, right? Like AI is a moving target. It's a wild west. I get leery anytime somebody says they're an AI expert. Like unless you're actually working at, OpenAI or Cloud or Gemini, like it's hard to just say you're a true expert. I think it's really early at least.
Mm,
Um, but there's so much to learn. And so, yeah, that was the exact advice to him. I said, okay, well, one, where you can optimize your profiles, that will help. And like we're talking about, why would you not use AI to help with all of this? So one of my
mhm,
suggestions, if you're listening to this, I would say, pull up your AI of choice. Maybe
mhm,
go even between the two, like two, to kind of compare the outputs. So pull up, Gemini and or ChatGPT. Personally, I'm loving Claude right now for B to C messaging and tone. Claude has been really like rocking my socks off. Um, but go into one of those, platforms and ask like, I need help creating a GEO optimized, bio,
mhm,
right? Start there. And
mhm,
again, you can, my whole thing is like, I want to be able to have content that sounds human and personalized without having it just sound like, I want to be able to be creating content for both humans and robots, not
mhm.
just being so robotic that humans are like, well, that was chat GPT and like, you have no ounce of care. Like you can write things creatively that still hit those points that you're needing to hit.
Okay, that's a nice segue into. We're going to put links to all your resources in the show notes, by the way, your AI After Hours podcast and newsletter, some other resources you have. But I'm going to pull this one from one of your emails that I received relevant to your newsletter, which is, are you using AI like a vending machine? What do you mean by that? What do you want to kind of help people be aware of?
I think by default, especially as people are just getting into using AI, it's supposed to make our lives easier. We all claim that you're going to have leverage and efficiency, and what I hear in frustration a lot is that they're spending more time refining the prompts than if they had just written it themselves. And so, I would tell people listening, first of all, you have to, excuse me, you have to play around and use it to kind of learn how it works. Um, but in the context of a vending machine, a lot of times, people will go in and say, they're wanting to write a post. Give me 3 reasons why you should buy a home in Denver, Colorado today. Well, it's going to give you an output, yes, but anybody else in Denver that's wanting to create content, they might be using that same prompt or very similar because it's a question, right? We want to create content that is answering questions that our real audience might have.
Mhm,
Um, so without perfecting that, they're using it like a vending machine. It's like put 2 quarters in, which is your prompt, and then
mhm,
you take whatever it spits out without actually putting, we call it gain of information. So it's like you can take the information that AI would give you, but then what is the information that you're going to be like, what's your personal angle on that? Right?
mm,
So what's your unique story? So AI might give you a frame. I always like to kind of treat my outputs as like 80% there. But I also am refining my prompts. Okay, so here's my personal story, or here's my client's story, and I'll put my own 2 cents in so it's not just the exact copy paste replical. Like it really is more a collaboration of, it synthesizes my organization and my ideas, but then I put the final touches before posting anything.
Let's get practical and let's go deeper on this thread we're talking about here, which is, essentially, who doesn't want to get discovered by search, right? As consumers continue to lean into AI a little bit more for search or other platforms as well. But I want to get like really specific for people. Let's say a loan officer's listening and they've heard of this whole concept of GEO, AI related
Mhm.
search. And we need to now, as you said earlier, we're creating content not just for people, but for robots, AI
Yeah.
platforms. The thing I think, I don't know if you said this or I did from that slide deck we were working on, which is AI recommends versus ranks, right? It tends
Mhm.
to recommend. And so, what would be some core principles? How do we get started on getting recommended by AI?
Yeah. I can give you some high level things of which we can talk about, and then I'll also kind of have a caveat. Is it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination,
Mm,
and I'll get to my example in just a second. So high level, um, LLMs love authority. Like they're really, when they're recommending, they're going off of just straight context. Obviously, they've removed all emotion, all feelings, and that what that make you a human. So it's straight context. So they're looking at authority. If you ask, who is the best loan advisor in, Seattle, Washington, it's going to pull from actual facts, not just theory. So, your reviews are huge. So anytime you guys can push reviews, that's really important. I know as loan officers and just any person that collects reviews, we all say we need to be doing it. I would say now more than ever, you can't afford to not be asking for the reviews. Google is really a great source. LLMs do also pull in, third party aggregators like your experience.coms and what have you. But having your reviews are great because those reviews are third party verified that somebody has, their own unique account and they gave that review. It's different than if I just copy and pasted a review and posted it on my website because LLMs can't verify that that actually was from a real person. I could have made it up for all it knows. And I'm sure some people do. So pushing your reviews, your clients to leave reviews is really great. And then, creating content too. So as I always tell people, my loan officers, I'm like, keep a list of the questions that you get asked. I think sometimes as loan officers, we get stuck in our head, like, I don't want to write about that. Everybody's talked about that, or it's really boring. Well, that is probably true. Everybody in your circle has, but your clients most likely haven't. And the people that are searching for you that maybe you've never talked to before haven't. So think about the types of questions that your real clients are asking you. I always say keep a notes tab on your phone. Everybody has a notes tab on their phone. And if you get a question, write that down and then find ways to turn that into content. That specific question, how did you specifically help that client navigate that scenario or that topic? Now you don't just have, that generic answer, but you also have your own personal response, which is, that's generative. It's unique. um, so that's a couple things. And yeah, just being consistent, creating content, making sure that you're training the LLMs. The caveat story that I was going to say is there was one loan officer that I was doing a webinar for on GEO. So I was like, well, this will be really fun. I pulled a you, Jeff, and I Googled her, I searched her in AI ahead of time. And I was really stunned because this loan officer is very well known and has a lot of Google reviews. So I was like, there's no way she won't be number one. She was
mm,
not number one. I was like, okay, what is going on here? And the
mhm,
person that outranked her had like 20% the amount of reviews that she had. This loan officer had like 165, and the loan officer that was number one had like 19. So it was like a huge discrepancy in terms of credibility. And so that's when I, drilled down. And so if you're asking any of the AI platforms who is so and so, and you don't pop up as number one, I would encourage you to then reverse engineer and ask, okay, why did you propose this? Why did you recommend this person?
Hmm.
And try to get some of that information. And that's exactly what I did with this one client. And it was like, well, this person has really good reviews. So I
Hmm.
said, okay, give me 5 others in this geographical zip code. And then the next person was that loan officer that I was trying to search for. So
Uh,
then I compared and I said, okay, this loan officer has 165 Google reviews and the loan officer you recommended has 19. So why did you recommend her first if it's truly on reviews? And it came back and said, oh, it was the speed of which it was returned. And I was like, okay, I don't totally understand that. Like, I don't know. So that's why I say that as a caveat because like there's lots of like here's best practices, but
hmm.
LLMs are still evolving all the time
Right.
very rapidly. So as much as we can like try to systematize, I'm going to have the best reviews and I'm going to have the best optimized profile and this and that, there's still like chances that you might not be 100% recommended every time.
Hmm.
And some of that's just going to be out of your control.
Yes. Yeah, it does change. It'll change. I've done it as well, one day versus the next, looking up realtors,
Right.
for example. But it's interesting to your point about when you go deeper, it did pull up that other loan officer who did have more reviews. But by the way, for you listening right now, that's an exercise for you to do.
Hmm.
Again, I always say like think of AI as like your assistant, your digital assistant. Ask questions. You just heard Katie talk about the conversation she's having. Get curious, go deeper. I remember I was doing some research on this realtor I heard about from Tom Ferry, who, if I pull up her testimonial here real quick, she got 4 buyer clients from ChatGPT recommending her. And then she also had a listing where ChatGPT recommended her as an agent familiar with VA loan assumptions. That is
Hmm.
very niche, very
Very
specific.
niche. Hmm.
So, what's the takeaway there, you think?
My guess is and I'm going out on a limb with very limited information because I'm not even sure who you're referring to. But if I were to make some speculations, I would
Mhm.
imagine that she's in some capacity had a conversation or a breadcrumb somewhere online using that. So when
Yeah.
somebody goes and searches, because I've had 2 clients now that have directly been referred by ChatGPT as well, with no other entry points
These
to
are
that
loan
lead.
officers?
Mhm.
Loan
So the
officers. Okay.
one loan officer, and I'll kind of get into the examples of them as well, but yeah, so they were referred on ChatGPT, but my guess is there was some sort of, specificity. Maybe she had a reel or maybe she had a video or a
Right.
LinkedIn post or
Article.
something with
Mhm.
the VA assumable loans. That is very specific. And unless your whole website, everything you do is only on this, it's probably pulling from somewhere one time. I have seen the 2 clients that I was talking about just recently. They both work for the same company, and their company's digital footprint is very optimized. So I suspect that when they were asking for this exact example was down payment assistance. The first one was a down payment assistance program, and it gave a list of loan officers. My guess is that it was saying, hey, you're in this city or this area and it recommended. Because here's the thing, AI or LLMs, they want to refer you the best possible answer, the
Right.
truest and the best possible answer. So if you go in and say who is the best loan officer, it's gonna say like and I did that. That's what I started with the review, the loan officer I was just telling you about with all the reviews. Because I wanted to do this as an example. So I was like, "Who is the best loan officer?" And it came back and I was like, "Well, that's a big question because there's over 3, however many thousands of loan officers there are in the country. Are you like, we need to drill down more." So that's when I said, who is the best loan officer in this zip code, right? So it's going to try to give you the best match for your question. So it's
Mm.
not going to give you, a down payment assistance program for New York when you're living in Nevada, right? So
Right. Right.
it's probably I'm guessing it's probably knowing like, hey, your phone is in this area and you're asking, and or maybe she gave questions. I did ask for screenshots and the client did give screenshots of like her exact prompting. Um And so this is a cool story. It's the second client I was referring to. He's also with the same company, same geographical area, and a client had a higher rate from a competitor and they were looking for a lower rate. So I don't know the exact question that they typed in, but it was something like, how can I look at getting a lower interest rate? And this client's bank was recommended and his name was at the top of the one. But the client didn't just take that recommendation on AI at face value. The cool part is that client went over to LinkedIn, which actually shocked me, but went to LinkedIn to look up this loan officer to see if this loan officer had like recent and frequent activity on
Hmm,
LinkedIn. The
interesting.
cool part is I had been coaching this loan officer for 6 months. Hey, you need to be on LinkedIn, you need to be posting, all of these things. And the client had seen that this loan officer was posting about market updates and different things, called the client or this
Hmm.
loan officer, and he closed the loan. He saved the deal and closed the loan. So in this specific instance, he has 100% direct, like this lead came from ChatGPT and I closed the loan. I was like, that's really cool and not common.
So, is the answer today that we do need to be at some level everywhere?
To go
Yeah,
everywhere
because you know how
optimization. Yeah.
people for years, and
Yeah.
as myself as well, would say, like, you can't be good across all platforms, right? You
Yeah.
need to pick 1 to 2 or ish, right? So you can be really
Yep.
good. But now with AI, looking at all the places, like I said earlier, search everywhere optimization. Like,
Yeah.
what do you that's in the real world, right?
I have so much empathy. I don't know if empathy is the right word, but I have so much for loan officers because, they really have the hard job of having to do sales and having to make it rain and foster relationships and save the deal and manage their teams and grow their business and be digital influencers that are showing up everywhere. And it's a lot. Um, I am not one to suggest that you need to create content on every single platform. Like I think you do need to be a lot of places and you need to be in front of as many people as you can, but to the point where it's not going to detract you from actually doing business too, right? Like you can't just be a TikTok influencer and on Instagram. Like you still need to be originating and prospecting and nurturing your database and calling your realtors and doing classes and things like that. So I mean, going back to what you're brilliant at with helping with teaching agent classes, that's a great thing. So if you're going to teach an agent class as an example, then maybe you go post something on an Eventbrite that
Mhm.
can, be crawlable, or you're going to go put it as, a LinkedIn event or maybe a Facebook event. So anywhere that you can promote and bring attention to what you're already doing in your business routine is just extra juice for the squeeze. So if you're going
Mm.
to be teaching classes, go throw it up on Eventbrite. If you're already having the messaging that you're going to put in an email, so anywhere that's like private, like an email or in a private community or behind a paywall, AI
Right,
obviously can't access.
right.
But if you're going to go send that email out, would it be worth the opportunity for the 5 extra minutes or whatever it takes to go put that into a LinkedIn, event or
Mhm.
an Eventbrite where it can crawl it? So it's those little things of like, how can you make slight tweaks to incorporate AI visibility into the process that you're already doing, in addition to what you're doing on social media?
Hmm. Wow, okay.
So that's probably what I would say. And I mean, another thing, I know you and I have talked about this offline, but I was reading a recent article on Ahrefs, and we could put the link in the
Uh-huh.
show notes as well. But it had scrubbed the top 100 US sourced sites by
Mhm.
ChatGPT. So it scrubbed like 9.6 million ChatGPT queries, and it extrapolated the top 100 US based websites. And
Mhm.
from that, Reddit is number one. So Reddit is a great place. But when you pull out the Targets and the Amazons and the People magazines, which we're never going to have an audience with or control over, LinkedIn was number 74. And so that's one of the things that really caught my attention to largely focus my strategy, at least right now, for content on LinkedIn, because there's a lot of visibility and LLMs look at LinkedIn because like your profile is already vetted and verified. So
Hmm.
I used to write all of my blog posts and put them on my own website, which I still do. But actually, I'm pushing a lot of my content strategy first over to LinkedIn because there's more credibility as hosting it on LinkedIn than my own website because my own website's, smaller
Hmm.
and I just developed it.
Interesting. Interesting.
So for any loan officers that are like, "Well, I don't have a big fancy website and I'm not the big mega producer with this huge personal brand footprint everywhere." I love what is happening with AI because you don't have to. You can have a
Hmm.
strategy where you're showing up consistently, in YouTube videos, or if you don't like doing video, then consider a newsletter on LinkedIn or
Yeah.
consider an article where again you can take what are those questions that your clients are most likely asking, and you can start with AI to help, give me a list of, the top 20 questions that my X, demographic might be asking. And then you can start having conversations and creating content around that as well.
Yeah. Speaking of questions, by the way, touching back on Reddit here for a second,
Yeah.
you and I both as well, a lot of late night hours doing this research and all that. So, you know this very well, but this is for the listener. One of the ways to leverage Reddit easily is to get content, the questions,
Mhm.
to understand what real buyers and sellers are worried about. So one of the things you can do today is go to Google, and you can go to Google and type in moving to your city Reddit, or whatever, first time home buyer Reddit. There's all these subreddits, right? And so you can start on
Mhm.
Google because that will bring up the subreddit searches, and then you'll jump into those
Yep.
communities that are on Reddit, that you'll get this list of, because everybody's like, well, how do I create content? This is one way to easily, yes, you can use Answer the Public and all that, but this is actually,
Mhm.
of course, real people, real time, fresh, and that might be a good place to start as well. What do you think?
I love that. I haven't done that specific query, but I just typed it in as you were talking, and so I'm definitely going to
What'd you
check
get?
this out.
Anything useful?
Yeah, I mean, all of my
Well, you're
stuff
in
is.
Montana, so who's
I'm
moving
in
there?
I'm in rural Montana. So, yes, who is moving there? We have more elk and wildlife than we have people. Um, we like to keep it that way though.
Right. Yes. Please
But
don't move here.
anyway, so
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is a great place to start. I did create a custom GPT and I can give you the
Hmm.
the link for that as well. It's like a Reddit scrubber. It's really simple.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, but it's a GPT that helps, yeah, with some Reddit stuff. But I think understanding the voice of your customer, right? So
Yeah.
you can go into Reddit, into those sub communities. Again, one of the things that I do is I'll go into Reddit and then I'll just type in, like, here is an example. When the 50-year loan conversation went
Hmm.
viral in our world a couple weeks ago, everybody was talking about it.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, well, I know what the loan officers and mortgage executives are saying, but I want to know, like, what is it? What are the clients and the home buyers really actually thinking about this? So I went over to Reddit, and there's a couple core subreddits like mortgage and real estate and a couple. So I went into the mortgage one, and then there's subreddits for, first time home buyers and what have you. And so I just put in the search word, like, 50-year mortgage, and it brings up a boatload of conversations. So I clicked on one that had, I don't know, over 6,000 comments because it was trending. So then I took that URL for that specific Reddit thread, and then I threw that into my AI GPT and I said, please scrub this thread. Now, I don't think it's scrubbed all 6,000, but I just said, can you pull out, the top 5 comments? One's emotional, one's supportive, one's, against it. And so I used that to help me filter down some real true voice of your customer sentiment.
Hmm. And
So
did you
yeah,
find something useful? Hmm.
I mean, other than it, just as I was writing my response, or I think I was writing a LinkedIn post about it, I was able to pull in like direct quotes, so like, hey, this person is, in this market. And again, it's not like I know them. So I was pulling direct, feedback of, hey, this person says it's a really good idea and here's why, or this person says it's terrible and here's why. Um,
Hmm.
so again, I think, yeah, you can look at your long for, or go over to Google. Perplexity is another tool that I really like. And there's a free version that you can start with, and you can go do some searches there as well.
Hmm.
Um, But yeah, your example of whatever the long form tail question is, think of the question and then just type Reddit after it. And that's a really simple place to start.
Let's kind of give them one last thing to chew on in terms of, we've talked about getting discovered, recommended in AI search, the type of content, where to go to look to learn consumer sentiment and get ideas. How about this framework? You have a framework for turning one piece of core content into multiple pieces. Do you want to share that?
Yeah. Yeah, everything that I'm building and everything that I share and I do really comes out of like me learning it also. So a lot of what I build is like starts with my pain point, and then I'm like, well, if I have this pain point, other people probably have this
Right.
pain point. Um, so this was a couple months ago. I was out for a walk and I was just like feeling so overwhelmed, which I'm sure most of our listeners have felt at times. Like, oh, what do I create for content? And this is just like it's a machine. And so I'm a huge fan of voice talking with my AI tools. So I
Mhm.
was out for a walk and I just activated my I think it was ChatGPT at the time, my voice chat. And I was just talking to it like, here's where I'm feeling stuck in my head or stuck in my business and blah, blah, blah. So work through this, kind of chat idea in my head. And then I said, hey, I bet if I'm struggling with this, other people probably have similar frustrations. Can you help me craft a podcast topic around this? Because I do an AI podcast under 10 minutes. And so I was fleshing out that idea. And then I said, okay, can you write the script at conversational page a pace under 10, 10 minutes or less? So it got there. And then I said, okay, well, can you now repurpose that and write the show notes and the show title for me? Great. So then it did that. And then I said, okay, well, can you turn this podcast idea into an email that I can send to my database? I don't want to tell them what the whole podcast is about, but I want to have a strong hook and a strong call to action to go listen to the podcast. So then again, I'm doing this all while I'm walking because it's reading back to me what it's saying. So then we
Mhm.
worked through the email and then I said, "Can you help me create I think I did a Instagram reel script for it as well." So in a 30-minute walk, by the time I had gotten back to my house and I opened ChatGPT on my desktop, I had worked through the idea for a podcast episode with show notes, a title, a framework for my email, and a social media post. And again, I still had to go assemble all of the content. Like I still had to record my podcast and I still had to host it and, all of the things. But the heavy lifting for the ideas I was able to do while I was out walking. And so how I like to repurpose content is you start with an idea, right? You start with what's
Mhm.
your core idea. Maybe that's a client objection that you had. Maybe it's a deal you lost. Maybe it's a celebration for that client that finally went through credit repair and they just got, the keys to their house. So whatever your idea is, I like to work through that with my AI tools. And I usually start with a long form piece of content. So whether that's a blog post or a LinkedIn article. So I write that as kind of my foundational piece. And then I will continue in that same chat thread because all of the knowledge is in that chat. And then I'll
Mhm.
say, can you repurpose this into an email? Make it
Mhm.
more story driven. So each piece of content I'm completely changing because how you
Right.
deliver the content and on what platform is going to vary in how it's received. But the core history of the conversation and really developing the idea is in that same chat. And then I just ask it to refine and repurpose until I get it in the output that sounds like me and something I would actually say.
And that's you having a conversation with the voice assistant, the actual live interaction versus the dictation.
I do both. It depends on kind of my day. Sometimes,
Mhm.
it's hard for me. Like I try to get my stuff out on Saturday night, and most
Mhm.
9 out of 10 times it's always I put my kids down, it's 10 o'clock at night, and I was like, crap, I gotta get my content out. So what I've been pushing myself to do is earlier in the week, start thinking through what's my big content idea for the week, and what do I want to share? So I'll open a new history in my AI platform, and maybe I'll start voice texting if I'm driving, on Bluetooth, or sometimes if I'm at my desk, I'll type it. I've just found that we word vomit so much better verbally than if we're typing.
Right.
So that's just what works for me. It might not for other people. But I'll start kind of formulating my idea earlier in the week, and I'll kind of pop back into that chat if I have something else to add to it so that when I go to actually create the full content package, I've already kind of primed the chat history. So I'm not starting at ground zero.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really productive use of multitasking with time. They say you can't multitask, but it sounds to me like that's a pretty good.
Here's I kind of shocked myself last night, and I'm loving Claude for different things too. I will say the Claude voice texting is a little
Mm,
more clunky. It's not as good. Like it seems to pick up interruptions, like audio interruptions easier. But anyways, it's performing better for creative copy. So anyways, last night I was interviewing myself because I was like
mm.
trying to get through some messaging, and I was like, I am my ideal avatar. So here's my frustration. Now help me put on this avatar. Anyways, I'm not joking you, Jeff. I spent 2 hours voice texting my AI because my kids were gone last night, and I got 2 loads of laundry done. I took a bath, and I made my bed, all while having a 2-hour conversation with my AI, and I literally worked through so much stuff, and I was like I got
Yeah,
done and I crawled into bed. I was like, "Not only did I just do business stuff, but I, like, got 2 loads of laundry done. I took a bath. I, like all of these things," and it was, like, great because it was, like, hyper productive, and I was,
right.
like I
That's
felt like I
awesome.
was winning last night.
So, people listening, what is your one big takeaway? Think about this. What's the one or two ideas? I think that framework right there is a lot for people to just the
Mhm,
lights go on. I know it does for me. Because think about it, like anywhere you're going somewhere. Now you're in your car driving, walking,
mhm.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
doing the thing. Why not start to get in the habit and the cycle of exercising those muscles, right?
Well, and it's exactly what you just said. It's a habit. I
Yeah.
think, I always try to look at my whole day, my whole life, like everything is content. Now,
Mm,
of course, I'm not going to document everything. One, that's wildly boring. But two, it's time consuming and it's like not engaging. But everything. So if you think about every client email, every conversation, whether you're talking to a realtor, you're talking to a business partner, even if you're having a conversation with your kids or your partner or whoever, there's ways that you can like how can I share this with my audience? Like
mm.
what is an idea here? What is something? And for me, like probably everybody listening, we're all busy, whether you have kids or not, like whatever
Yeah.
sees life is busy.
Yeah.
So I try to optimize my pockets of time. So, like every day, I drive to pick up my daughter from school. So it's like I've got 15 minutes instead of just being in the car listening to music. I'll activate my voice text and with my AI, and I'm like, "Here's a client objection I just had. Help me write a content piece about this," or whatever. So rather than I guess my big takeaway is like, rather than trying to start really big and going all in, what's one habit that you can develop with AI today? Right.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe that's voice activation. Maybe that's just starting to learn. Maybe you have no context for this and this all feels overwhelming. Great. Who are some voices that are ahead of you in this journey? Right. That's the reason I
Right.
started the AI After Hours podcast. It's one episode a week, it's 10 minutes or less, focusing on one habit, one idea. Try to
Right.
like simplify that. So start somewhere and then like build habits around that and just
Mm.
using your AI. Practice, try to break it, search
Yep.
yourself. I mean, wherever you're wanting to focus, you won't tackle AI and all of it. There's no way. So you have to start somewhere where you have the most critical need in your business or your life. And
Hmm.
then, if there's somebody ahead of you, go contact them, reach out to them, follow them, whatever. But just start.
I think that's great advice. It's a new skill that we need to learn. And yeah, a way to integrate it into your daily life. Okay, so we have shared a ton. This has been incredibly valuable. You just mentioned your podcast, the AI After Hours. We're going to link that in the show notes, as well as we'll put a link in there for the brand builder solution consulting. Tell us real briefly about that. What is that?
Yeah, so that's like, we talk about creating I like the term AI slop, right? If you go in and say
Hmm.
3 reasons why I should move to Denver, you're going to get the output that's going to sound like, "Oh, ChatGPT wrote that." So what I do through the brand builder exercise is I work with loan officers. I do an interview with you. I ask you a ton of questions about your business, and then I build out a brand book that is it's I call it your brand brain. It essentially takes together what is your origin story and who are your client profiles and everything that we can learn about your brand, put that to words and frameworks, and then now you have this really awesome document that you can load into any AI platform so it knows who you are. You're feeding it like proactively the information. I've been doing this for almost a year now, but it like solidified for me is about a month ago. My ChatGPT account, I was merging it, and I lost all of my history. And
Hmm.
so, literally, in about 3 seconds, everything in the last 2.5 years, the memory that it knew about me was wiped. And so
Wow.
all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, I have to basically start from scratch." The cool part is I was able to take my brand book that I already had, and now I was able to re-upload it to ChatGPT, update my custom assistants, and I was back in business by the end of the week, rough or take, because I was now feeding it information about me versus relying on its memory that I had fed over time. And that's what my
Love.
brand builder book does.
All right. And we're going to link that in the show notes as well. The brand builder book. That's an excellent exercise to go through. I can attest to that as well. A lot of self discovery. All right. So, Katie, this has been awesome. Long time coming. A lot of content here. Everybody listening right now, I know, is like chomping at the bit. They probably learned more in this one session than anything else they've been exposed to thus far for AI. So please, if you're
Yeah.
listening, reach out. By the way, do you have an LinkedIn? We'll put a LinkedIn.
Yeah, I am on
Yeah,
Instagram. That's more on my running and my food and my kids, but LinkedIn is where I love to hang out. So come follow me on
yeah.
LinkedIn. DMs always open to conversations.
That's what I was going to say. So if you're listening to this, check the show notes link for her LinkedIn, and then DM her and let her know the one big takeaway that you got from today's episode. Katie Shive, thank you
Yes.
so much for being here.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
All right, listeners, you know what to do. Appreciate you. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.